Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1991 horror camp cult classic, Popcorn. Buy a bag, go home in a box. I always love that tagline. I think that it's just a really catchy tagline. And I also feel that this poster was very eye-catching visually. It definitely pops. And this is a request for Brock, so special shout out goes to him. And if you have a film that you would like to see or hear me discuss, or a topic you would like to hear me talk about, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description. Now, Popcorn is a very interesting oddity. It's an oddball when it comes to the horror genre. I think that is a big reason why the film has such a big cult following now, is because it is such a odd man out when it comes to the genre. And I can definitely understand why. I like the film. I don't love the movie, though. I think there are a few elements, a few things here and there that really prevent it from popping as high and as often as it could. But it's still a rather enjoyable and fun movie that perfectly captures the campy vibe of cheesy, corny B movies of the 50s and 60s, as well as the overall vibe of a midnight movie experience where when you sit down and watch a film with a crowded audience and a bunch of people in the theater laughing and joking around and just having a really good time. I've had the opportunity to see a lot of really classic films in the theater with tons of people in the audience and experience that kind of one of a kind moment. And I feel that this film really does a great job capturing that overall feel of what it's like to be a part of a horror marathon in the movie theater. And it's also a really nice tribute and admittedly a satire of William Castle's ridiculous gimmicks that he put into his films to get people to go see them in theaters. With the mosquito that flies down from the rafters to scare the audience who are watching the film in 3D. Oh, you're watching it in 3D, and then there's a real mosquito that's now in the audience. And then you have stuff like electrified chairs in the theater, which is is an absolute take and send off of what William Castle did with the Tingler. Then you have the stench, which has like odorama, which is a real thing. I think it might have been a William Castle thing, but I know John Waters also did something with polyester where there's like scratch and sniff cards for certain scenes in the movie. So it's a really nice, fun send off of William Castle's gimmicks. And I think a lot of people really like that about it. And it also features a fantastic and really underrated villain and performance by Tom Villard, and some really great makeup effects for that character and all the other sort of things that he does when it comes to his disguises. And I just feel that it's a movie that speaks to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. It's funny. It's not as laugh out loud hilarious as it could be, but it has its fair share of moments. I mean, just lines of dialogue like, "I look like a fucking snow cone," and just all the other stuff that goes on throughout the movie. And I think that that's something that really does resonate with a lot of people. Now, the film is directed by Mark Herrier, but it's also directed by Alan Ormsby, because Alan Ormsby was actually the original director for this film. He was replaced very early in production because there were some things that were going on set where Alan was spending a little bit too much time on the B movie sequences, the fake B movies, the Amazing Electrified Man, Mosquito, and so on and so forth. And he wasn't spending the same amount of time or effort on the other sequences in the film with the main cast, which is the main portion of the movie. And as a result, the dailies were not that impressive, and there's also rumors that he wasn't really getting along that well with his cast. He was given the job because he was a longtime colleague and friend of Bob Clark's, who Bob Clark was very instrumental when it comes to this movie. He helped produce it along with a bunch of other people. He's uncredited as a producer, but he was one of the main voices behind this film, as well as the overall concept and approach to it. So this is one of those films that he decided to give to Alan because Alan wanted to direct. He had this passion for directing, and they were close friends, and Alan's definitely got talent. I mean, you can see it in the fake B movies, but it seems like he just wasn't able to really get the timing right when it comes to shooting things in a timely manner, and to really get the most out of his cast or his crew when it comes to sequences that were outside of the B movie arena. He wasn't as good as tapping into what at the time was contemporary horror or contemporary performances or characters. So I think he was replaced for that very reason. He couldn't get things in on time, and he wasn't really getting the most out of the main portion of the film. So he was replaced by Mark. And the reason why Mark came on board is because he had worked with Bob. I think he'd shot some short films. I believe Bob might have been teaching at a university. And he really liked what Mark had done with his short films. So brought Mark on board. And what makes things even more complicated is that this was a film that was shot in a really strange kind of setting for a location. It was shot in Jamaica because one of the producers felt that Jamaica could be like a new burgeoning destination for shooting films. So you had to deal with that kind of thing, which, you know, you got the heat, and you got a lot of different sort of problems with dealing with a lot of people who were, you know, on your crew who don't have as much experience working on films and shooting in a set that is this abandoned movie theater that was just a haven for bums and smelled like piss and was just an absolute cesspit and cesspool. So you had to deal with that, and there's just a lot of things that really made things very complicated when it comes to the shoot. So Mark got brought on, and he eventually was able to win the respect of his cast and his crew. Took him a little bit because he had to kind of get out from underneath Bob, who was kind of hovering over him while he was shooting sequences. But once he was able to do that, he really made the film his own, and he got more out of his cast than Alan was able to, because he saw that they weren't really giving very good performances, and he wasn't having any of it. Like, he actually set them aside and said, "This is terrible. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have an opportunity to make a movie, to be in a film, to do something that not everybody gets the chance to do. So are you going to give it your all, or are you just going to kind of go through the motions? It's up to you." And as a result, you know, tapped into their pride and really got much better performances, much more lively performances from the cast. And this film needed that, because it needs that energy. That's a big part of why it's so entertaining, is because of the energy of the cast. And I don't feel that really would be as evident if Alan continued to direct the film. And I don't think he would have continued to direct the film, because the movie just would have been canceled. Because The studio was just having these cost overruns and all of these things that were going on, and Alan just wasn't turning things in on time. And if Mark didn't come in, it just never would have gotten made, because I don't think Bob would have taken over, because he didn't want to direct horror films anymore. So he would not have taken over, and he was also older, and he just didn't really want to do that kind of project. So that's why Mark, in a lot of ways, is this film's savior. And I thought he did a marvelous job directing this movie when it comes to really lighting things well, and in terms of, setting up the camera and really getting the best out of particular sequences when it comes to the lighting, or the setting of the movie theater, and shooting sequences, like when the marquee titles fly off the marquee at D. Wallace. Even though that sequence makes no sense in the context of the rest of the movie, and I'll get to that later when I talk about the story. And other various different moments, like the dream sequences, Maggie's dreams, that are about the possessor, and even the short film, The Possessor itself. I thought there was just a lot of real talent that was showcased when it comes to Mark's direction. And it's a shame that there's a lot of people nowadays that buy into rumors and it thinks that he didn't direct the movie, like it's some Steven Spielberg, Tobe Hooper kind of controversy. And you can really hear the pain in his voice when he's talking about that in an interview, series of interviews on this Blu-ray. Which are a part of this really great documentary on the making of the movie, of just like 57 minutes long, with interviews with Mark, with Joe Schoelen, and others. It's called Midnight Madness, The Making of Popcorn. I 100% highly recommend that. I think it's a great documentary. It's every bit as enjoyable as the film itself. So yeah, it's a shame that Mark has to deal with all of that, because it's his film. The sequences with the B movies and stuff like that, that's stuff that Alan did, and Alan deserves a lot of credit, and deserves all the credit for that, because that's the stuff that he did. But when it comes to other sequences, the stuff in Dreamland and the stuff outside of it with Possessor and all this other stuff, that's all Mark's work. And that's definitely something that he really deserves the utmost credit for. And I also really love the way he shot the sequences with Toby, and anything dealing with an effects sequence, whether it was visual or practical effects. Yeah, I really do legitimately think Mark did a really good job directing Popcorn. Now, the screenplay by Mitchell Smith and Alan Ormsby. Now, Alan Ormsby is the guy who... forgive me here. Alan Ormsby is the guy who is mostly responsible for this film when it comes to this screenplay. And a lot of the film's success and a lot of the film's failures lie at his feet. The combination of different genres, horror and comedy. Sometimes the comedy and horror don't really mix as well. They're not necessarily the most delicious brew or combination. But on more than one occasion, they do manage to create some genuinely tasty flavors. When they're satirizing B movies or satirizing William Castle's gimmicks. I feel that it's a missed opportunity, though, when it comes to the screenplay. When it comes to satirizing or doing a send-up of slasher films. Contemporary horror within this movie that's a tribute and a homage to campy B movies. I feel that it missed the boat and really missed the ball when it comes to that kind of thing. Really would have made the film even more original and unique and genuinely entertaining if they also approached the slasher elements with Toby and people getting killed by different gimmicks and stuff like that if they approached it in a way that was also a tongue-in-cheek satire of slasher tropes. But didn't go that route. Wasn't quite that clever. It has this weird supernatural stuff going on where you think it might be Lanyard Gates' ghost that's doing stuff, but then they never do anything with it. After like one scene with D. Wallace when the marquee titles are flying off the marquee, they don't do anything with that after that. I guess Lanyard Gates ran out of psychic power, and that was it. That was all he could do. It doesn't tie into any other sequence throughout the rest of the movie, so it honestly feels kind of pointless. Even though it's a really well shot and well done sequence, it just doesn't necessarily work. Should have been more of a dream sequence, and I think then that would have worked better. But the way it's set up just makes it appear as if it's happening in real life, in the reality of the film instead of in the dream world. Also, I don't really care for the climax. I think it's a letdown because the character Toby, spoiler, he gets killed the exact same way as Tony Roberts' character did earlier in the movie. He gets impaled by the mosquito prop. Why would you just rehash and repeat the same kill for your climax? Incredibly disappointing. I don't understand why they did that. It really makes the climax feel rushed and lazy. But, like I said, there's a lot of things about the screenplay that really do pop when it comes to the approach and when it comes to the overall take that Alan was going for. It's a very ambitious movie, a lot of different ways in terms of handling all these different elements and all these different genres in one film. And even though it doesn't always work, it works quite often, and I think that is a big reason why the film is ultimately as good as it is. Could have been great, but it's still good. And that's a testament to the work by Alan and Mitchell Smith when it comes to the screenplay. Now, the cast, I'm just going to get it out of the way and talk about Tom Villard. Tom Villard is absolutely spectacular in this film. He is amazing. He really does a wonderful job bringing this character of Toby to life and balancing all these different emotions with this character. He makes the character genuinely funny and charming, but at the same time it's a character that is genuinely terrifying and unhinged and somebody that you really don't want to get on their bad side. So there's a lot of comic kind of stuff, comic book, cartoon kind of feelings and approaches that Tom is doing with this character. Kind of like a precursor to The Mask in some ways, Jim Carrey's performance in that film. And there are some lines where he actually sounds like Digger from the Winnie the Pooh cartoon, but it's still ultimately is something that you can take seriously just enough that this is a villain that is genuinely scary on more than one occasion because of how manic and crazy he is. It helps make this character more unpredictable and really helps you become more unease when it comes to any sequences dealing with him. And Tom was just so game for this role. Under just pounds and pounds of makeup, he still managed to emote and to just really explode when it comes to his acting ability. Just exploded off the screen every scene that he was in. A big reason why I like the film is due to Tom Villard's performance as Toby. It's a really cool, unique design as well when it comes to the makeup effects. And first time makeup effects designer really aced this film when it comes to the effects. I thought he did an excellent job for a guy who hadn't done a whole lot of films at all before this in terms of handling all the makeup effects. And yeah, Tom Villard was just terrific. And his performance is even more impressive when you realize that he had AIDS. He was doing all of this. He was giving his utmost effort, like really just going 110% with this role while knowing that he was dying. I mean, can you imagine being able to continue to just do this high energy performance and make it consistently energetic while knowing that you are going to die? It just, words can't express how impressed I am with his performance, knowing that he was dealing with all of that at the time. And that's something that also the rest of the cast and crew had to deal with, because it was a well-known thing among the cast and the crew that he had AIDS. He opened up to director Mark Herrier and said, I have AIDS. And you're just like, whoa. And he died pretty shortly, I think pretty soon after this film was released, if I remember correctly. I think he might have done maybe, he didn't do a whole lot, if not anything, after this movie. So in a lot of ways, his character in this of Toby is kind of a lasting legacy for Tom. A part of a lasting legacy. And one of his best performances, and really did showcase his versatility as an actor. And he will absolutely be missed. And this documentary on the Blu-ray had a really nice, heartfelt tribute to Tom that was really a treat and really wonderful to see, because you heard from people that knew him that he was a guy who was a really good person, and not only a good actor, but a good guy, and that he would have loved to have seen all the admiration and respect and appreciation that he's gotten today for his performance in the film. I know it's pretty somber, but I feel like I have to mention that, because this film is in a lot of ways kind of forgettable if it isn't for Tom, if it isn't for his approach and his performance as Toby. Because that's where you get to the problem, one of the biggest problems of the film for me. The two heroic leads are really weak and wooden. They don't have any chemistry. Nothing against Joe Schoelen or Mark Rydall. I mean, Derek Rydall, who played the character Mark in this. I think they're genuinely good people. And I like Joe Schoelen, but she's an actress that delivers very uneven performances. There will be scenes where it seems like she's just sleepwalking, and then there'll be other scenes where she's on her A game. And this is another instance of that, where she has some scenes where she's just kind of going through the motions, and then other scenes where she's delivering a pretty solid performance. But it seems like there's never really a total, complete performance when it comes to Joe Schoelen. And I thought that Derek Rydall did a better job in Night Visitor than he did in this film. So you have a film with a fantastic and great antagonist in Toby and Tom Villard. But you have heroes that are just really weak and forgettable and don't have any chemistry with one another. And they're written away, especially with the character Mark. He's a bumbling fool, and then he's also the hero at the end. I don't really think that was the best approach to take for that character. Um, and I honestly would have rather have seen Kelly Jo Minter's character Cheryl, or just Kelly Jo Minter period, play the lead in this film, because she had a lot of spunk, a lot of energy, and charisma, and I thought she was really great in every scene she was in. It wasn't really in that many scenes, but if she was the lead, I think that would help the film, because I really did like what she had to offer, and would have created a really fun dynamic between her and Toby. The rest of the cast, fine. Tony Roberts as Mr. Davis, Ray Walston has a bit role. Ivette Solar as Joni, Elliott Hurst as Leon, Malcolm Danare as Bud. I feel the cast, for the most part, except for Derek Rydall and Joe Schoelen, they all had some really good chemistry among each other, and you really bought that this was kind of a party atmosphere for them when it comes to shooting the movie. And I just wish that it just had stronger heroic leads. I think that's one ingredient that is really missing from this movie, and from this particular recipe of popcorn. I also wasn't that big on the score by Paul Zaza. It's very atmospheric and moody, and it's electronic, and sometimes it works and it does all right, but it doesn't really add much to the movie for me, and it's not memorable. I prefer my scores to be more memorable and actually resonate, and actually be something that I would listen to at some point. This just isn't one of those scores for me. And I've never really felt he was that great of a composer to begin with. He's a guy who has some of his scores are good, but then there's a lot of them that just run together and are just the epitome of generic scores. And I think this is another generic score. The Jamaican band who did a lot of the songs for the film, though, that's what stands out more. The Saturday Night the Movie song and some of the other stuff, the reggae infused music, and it makes sense why it's there because they shot in Jamaica. But that adds a nice, different, unique flavor to the film. I really legitimately like the Saturday Night the Movie song. It's very catchy. It's campy, but it fits right in line with the tone of the film. Cinematography wise, it's well shot by Ronnie Taylor. I thought it featured some really excellent editing. There's a lot of sequences that are very impressive when it comes to the editing, in particular the dream sequences. Stan Cole, I thought he did a really spectacular job. And it goes by at a decent enough pace. 97 minutes. It doesn't overstay its welcome too much. There's not a lot of moments where you want to run out of the theater or because you're bored and you need to do something. It's definitely something that is going to keep you intrigued because of the B-movie elements and the gimmicks and this whole mystery with Lanyard Gates and the film Possessor, and then what's going on with Toby once that gets revealed. But I wish the film had more of an edge to it as well. Some gore, some blood. I don't know why the producers went for a PG-13 rating. It was a mistake. So I wish that they had more. It was more of a harder edge to the film. I think that would have made it have more impact. Without that, you don't really have a lot of separation between the campy B movies that the audience is watching and the horror film that's going on at the same time. So I think some of these death scenes really could have benefited from a little bit more intensity. Would have made them scarier, would have made them a little more powerful instead of just palatable. In a lot of ways, they're just kind of palatable death scenes. They don't really have. It's not anything that really like sticks with you. So I feel that would have benefited the film a lot in terms of those sequences. Would have made it a little creepier, a little bit more, a little stronger when it comes to the scares and the horror, because there are a lot of moments in this that just have it. It's honestly about as scary and about as intense as like an episode of Goosebumps or Are You Afraid of the Dark. So I think I've actually seen scarier episodes of both. But it's a nice gateway horror film for younger audiences. Um, and I'm glad that it exists because you got Tom Villard just really just igniting the screen with a really off the wall, crazy, and wonderful performance. Fit perfectly for such a wonderful guy. And you got the unique elements of the B movies and the gimmicks and everything, and captures the overall vibe of being a part of a all night horror marathon very well, and it's a fun movie. It's not great, but it's still a lot of fun, and I definitely would recommend the film if you haven't seen it yet. And even if you're not super big on the film, pick up the Blu-ray because it's worth it for the documentary and for the transfer, which is easily the best the film has ever looked. So anyway, thanks for watching my review of Popcorn, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.